Hello, my name is Hussein Yusuf, and this is George Mason's School for Conflict Analysis and Resolutions podcast, and we are going to talk about Kony, a video that has gone on viral and almost about 70 million people have seen. And here with me, Kwaw, de-Graft Johnson, and Michael English, both PhD candidates here at the university. And we will talk about sort of the implications of this viral video, the controversies around it, some people liking this video that so many millions have seen, some people saying, well, there are a lot of problems with it. And a lot of people in the world don't really know who Kony is and what this controversy is all about. And so, Kwaw, my first question to you is, who's Kony?
Well, depending on who you ask, Kony will come off as a freedom fighter if you are from his ethnic group, or a rebel leader if you are in the ruling government, or a few years back, according to the US government, he was a terrorist. So different people have different interpretations as to who Joseph Kony is. But according to himself, he sees himself as the voice of God.
The voice of God.
Yes. Hence his group LRA, Lord's Resistance Army, as in Lord Jesus Christ, Christianity. So he sees himself as the mouthpiece of God, as in after the Holy Ghost is Joseph Kony.
After the Holy Ghost,
yes.
Joseph
So
Kony. Okay.
Sort of his rhetoric has been, I am fighting to make Uganda in the spitting image of God's kingdom, sort of heaven on earth. And that's what has been driving this conflict.
Him for 25 years.
Basically. But there are other implications towards how he came about, as in, well, there was a conflict in Uganda and that's where he sort of came from, but due to the change in the conflict, he sort of had to redefine himself. And I think this is where he is right now. So, depending on who you ask, Joseph Kony can be different people.
And of course, we've seen in the video his atrocities and what he has been doing for a long time. Michael English, why the uproar about this video? A lot of people are saying, you know what, this is really a simplified story, and besides, nobody should be involved in stories that people don't really understand. It's sort of a neo-colonialist kind of thinking. The West are coming again. So what is the uproar?
I think
this?
if we listen to Kwaw's very brief description of who Joseph Kony is, you already get a sense, if you've seen the video, that you weren't told any of that. That Joseph Kony is a monster that goes out and causes kids to rape and kill their parents and massacre whole villages, and is just this horrible human that somehow came out of nowhere. I think part of that uproar, and I had a lot of journalists that know a lot more about Uganda and the Great Lakes region in Central Africa, have been very quick to point out that, first and foremost, Joseph Kony isn't even in Uganda right now. And the fact that the video kind of situates him there and situates us in the north, that this is where this is all taking place, and you're drawn into a very complicated situation by pulling on your heartstrings. And instead of being analytical about it, they made a very effective piece of propaganda, which I don't think anybody is going to say Joseph Kony isn't a bad man, that we shouldn't be trying to get in jail, but the implications of the way they framed their message and how they think that should be done it raises a lot of questions for, I think, people interested in intervening in conflicts, people that work for NGOs, people that want to do peace-building work or development work, because it becomes an issue of getting money in exchange for getting out your message. And right now we're looking at an organization that probably has the best of intentions in mind, but that did very well on the fundraising side for an NGO, produced a very sharp product, and this is the backlash we're seeing. right? Because most of, I think, people in our field would think that this is a successful product. It did what it said it was going to do, which is raise awareness. 70 million people in a couple weeks that's awareness. So
That's awareness. And then you have the actual aid groups that you mentioned that are on the ground saying, well, this actually is not doing anything for the conflict, for the people. So what is there something good about awareness that this video finally has really brought into our bedrooms, into our computers? Now a lot of people know about Kony. Is there something good about the video in terms of what they have actually done, in even as simple as it seems?
I would say, I don't think we should try to simplify this either. You know, I think on one hand, what they did was excellent. It was excellent propaganda advocacy for a cause, and they've gone about it in a way that most people are going to now look at and say, like, this is a really effective model of taking social networking, video, creative, street performance, art, and all of that, mashing it into a product and saying you can get 70 million people to care about something that no one's cared about for 25 years. So on that end, you have to judge it as successful. But is it going to meet the need they think it's going to meet? Is Kony going to wind up before the ICC before the end of this year? Like, I don't know what kind of arbitrary deadline that really sets. What that does for the people on the ground that will have to live with an increased demand if people start saying, well, yes, we want troops there. I mean, we know, what do we know? We know that the U.S. already has advisors there. We know that the U.S., also not mentioned in that video, is not part of the ICC and pulled out of the Treaty of Rome right before we decided to invade Iraq. So on one hand, Invisible Children is calling for the world to respect the ICC, and on the other hand, it's turning to the greatest military power in the world and saying, well, you've got some people there, and we think that's a good step. We've not seen that work out yet with Saddam. We didn't see that work out with Osama. Didn't work out for Gaddafi. So, I don't know.
You don't know. Okay. It's very interesting. Kwaw, you mentioned earlier that in your opening you said that some people see him that is a man who basically fights for his tribe. Can you tell us, because we don't even know that? Can you tell us a little bit about like his tribe? What are they, and what in our language grievances?
So a brief history about Uganda. It was colonized like almost every other country in Africa, and so the colonizers, they sort of divided the country into two: the British, North versus South. So the South, when the British pulled out, controlled the economy and sort of ran the country. And the North were reduced to being laborers and, well, they just joined the army. So they became strong enough to say that, hey, we should take the country for ourselves. And this is when we have this ethnic polarity existing in most countries since like 1975, 78 period. And so they had a coup and they were successful. But the North was also divided. They had like 3 or 4 leaders.
And they were always strong on the military.
Yeah, they made up the military, sort of. They sort of made up the military. So they took over the country, but they didn't have any governance or strong leadership to govern the country. So
very interesting.
They couldn't control the country. And then comes in Yoweri Museveni, who is from the South, who couldn't even fathom the idea that a Northern was ruling his country. So he calls on some neighboring countries, gets troops, and basically kills all the Northern military people.
So Museveni has committed, in his struggle for taking over the state,
part of what Kony is saying is, I will stop what I'm doing if Yoweri Museveni is also captured. and tried just like me. Because I live and do what I do because of him. But people don't know that. And he's actually pulled out of a few peace talks. If he knows Museveni will be there, because if I see him, I'll kill him. So they have bad blood between the two of them, I think.
They're all stuck in the mud.
Yeah, Museveni has gone to his region, killed his people, trying to get at him, and he's gotten mad over this. So currently he's not in Uganda, but his war is with the Museveni government. So that's sort of where that conflict is. But in the bigger region of the Great Lakes region, even if Joseph Kony was not there, you are able to capture him, there's still going to be conflict. It's reputably the richest region in Africa. But because of, let's say, bad governance, that region has not reached its potential. Talk about DRC, conflict in DRC, Chad, a failed state. Now we have Sudan, which is sort of up and down. Uganda, it's much better than it used to be. But all these regions are sort of locked in this perpetual. They've had 5 head of states being killed. So many problems in that region. But the problem is, or the main issue is, even without Kony, the region is ripe for Konys. And even aside Kony,
there will be, even if he's captured, there will be more Konys.
Even before Kony, we had the female, what's her name? Lakwena, Miss Uma or something, but Lakwena, she was like rebel, supposedly Joseph Kony's aunt or cousin or something, until she died. And then you had Nkunda, who's been arrested. Then we had Joseph Oti, Joseph Kony's second in command, and there have been a few other people. And even the current president of Rwanda was a rebel leader. But Kony has sort of gotten the bad press because he's not head of state.
And he's doing bad stuff.
Don't get me wrong, he is, but so are other people.
Okay, very good.
And I think that's where you see the invisible children run into trouble. Is that where they'll look at Kony and say this man needs to be brought before the ICC. They won't do that to Museveni. They'll turn around and say we have to work with the state because the state's the only thing capable of bringing, this man to justice. Their answers get really weak when pressed on the Ugandan army and the atrocities they have committed, and the fact that they're interring people in the north so that they can, do this kind of resource containment and evaluate, what the state is going to do. And when you have added military advising from the United States with someone that's been deemed a target in the global war on terror, you have to start asking these questions.
It's very interesting. We never really think about Christian fundamentalists being part of the war on terror.
That was the comment that got Rush Limbaugh into trouble before his most recent thing, was when he said that Obama was trying to kill a Christian, because the rhetoric of the fundamentalist right here in the United States being that Obama's a secret Muslim, now he's trying to kill Christians in Africa, right? Like, isn't that where all our money goes, to these Christian charities in Africa, and now he wants to kill,
the Lord's man.
But you don't get any of this kind of complexity in a 30-minute clip that mainly focuses on a father's relationship to his child and not wanting his child to experience conditions which, in the United States, yes, his child is never going to be abducted in that way. Could his child join a gang? Without question. Are the homicide rates in U.S. cities, many of them the same, 200 people a year that Joseph Kony kills, the same as in D.C.? Yep, 200 people die each year in D.C., if not more. In the 90s it was worse. So bad things happen everywhere. Awareness is good, but you
don't really. Okay, very good. So I'd like to pull back a little bit and maybe think about, conceptually about the either the warlord or the religious figures or the gang member. I don't really want to talk about gangs, but like the warlords or the religious figures that always fight because the rights of their own tribe or ethnic group is being denied, and then in the process really commit horrific violence that we read about years later. Mm-hmm. So I would like you to address that and the concept of impunity. Is there room for it? Just simply because one says, you know what, I did this. You just saying, I did this because some other person did something to my own clan. And therefore I'm just trying. So how do we think about it? Number one, as a field, but also as human beings that do not really want young girls to be raped and huge communities to be cleansed. So how do we think about it? The concept of impunity, justice, what do we do? So I would like for both of you to address that, because that's, I think, something that we...
I think as Peter Tosh put in his song, there will be no peace without justice. And he meant that for everybody. Mm-hmm. So if you are trying Joseph Kony, you should try everybody else. Mm-hmm. You should not try, you should investigate all these allegations about the Ugandan government, about the Chadian government, mm-hmm. and then Joseph Kony. Mm-hmm. And if there's this equal share of blame and what's the word? In terms of, well, we regret what we've done, sort of reconciliation, and it was because of this, but they should still be held accountable for what they are doing, their actions. I think that may help, but not going after somebody as a scapegoat and
So getting one person is not helpful.
It's not.
Okay. Michael?
I see this is where I hesitate. A is not an expert in this region, mm-hmm. but in thinking about the way we've approached this as outsiders, particularly from the United States, seeking justice in another context, that it gets a little hairy. I don't know what the people of Uganda want to see happen. I don't have a clue. And as much as I want to pretend that this is an international concern to me, it's really not. It's not a United States issue. It's not even a North-South America issue, right? Like, this is a really isolated bad guy, and yes, he needs to be brought to justice, but I shouldn't have a say in what that justice is because I don't know. He didn't do anything to my family, or most likely anyone I know, or have come.
But as human beings, don't we have a responsibility to protect?
But see,
the most vulnerable in community, like children.
What does that mean, though? I mean, again, I agree a lot here with Kwaw's point of it's got to apply to everybody. Like, this community didn't get torn apart just because of Joseph Kony. Like, this community got torn apart because two sides went to war. And war is ugly, and it should be illegal. So everybody involved should be brought before the court and tried. But if we're just going after one person, and we think that's going to end it, that I'm not in that position. Like that's me imposing something that I have no right to do. I would love to see justice. May the people who have suffered under this man tell me what that looks like, because I'm not going to decide for them.
But apparently, all those young, what do we think about all these young kids who are on the streets, list on in that video, who, I mean, in schools we're always told, you have to really care about the world, you really have to know about the world, you have to think about justice, you have to do. So if we do say, as I'm really hearing both of you, that perpetrators, there are many of them, and you have to bring all of them at once. How is that going to happen? That is a very, very difficult thing. That means you will have to empty the country of a leadership.
Well, I think that the point has been there isn't leadership there to begin with. There's a skeleton that meets the needs of the international community, and you're the least worst bad guy. Especially if you've got resources, you're always the least worst bad guy until you can be gotten rid of, right? So I don't know how that works. You know, I think it's an interesting question for the international community because the international community needs to figure out ways to support democratic initiatives in these countries. And so far, we've done a really bad job of doing that with African states, right? Like, that's what we need to work on. Imposing things, telling them how they should be. I don't know where that gets us because so far, it doesn't seem to have gone very well. You know, I mean, you can speak to your this case from your own experiences.
It's a tough business. So Kwaw, what do we do? Because now, I mean, it is very clear. I mean, it is very clear that he is going to. He might be indicted because in that video, what you see is the prosecutor.
Yes.
The International Criminal Court saying.
Well, he is indicted. He's the number one.
Oh, he's the number one. I'm sorry.
yeah.
But people always forget this part. Before he was indicted, the UN had, I think, the former president of Nigeria, Obasanjo, as a mediator in that situation, and they were making headway with him until I think the UK and Australia said he was a bad person and put him in front of the ICC. So he was like, if you don't take this arrest warrant off me, this peace talks won't happen. And the AU and the UN didn't have the power to do that, so he just pulled out.
So he's going into the shadows.
So yes, and he left Uganda. He went to he went to other places because Uganda was becoming too
dangerous for him.
Too dangerous. Always has been since he started 26. But the fact is, he's been wanting to talk, like we can negotiate. He comes to this, but if he doesn't like what he's hearing, then he's like, okay, I won't be a part of this. When you have something better to offer me, then I'll come. Then we can sit down and talk. But the last one was ended when basically the ICC said, hey, we're about to arrest you. It's like, okay, I'm out. See you later.
Yeah, we got a few more minutes.
So
what's his background? What is he like?
well,
I mean, we know he's really like really.
He grew up as a Catholic. When the conflict started, he was like 15 or 16. And then he joined the local rebel groups. And when Lakwana started her whole march to the capital, like we're going to reclaim our heritage and be the rulers of Uganda again, he actually opted out of that advance. Like, I don't want to be part of this. But when her movement failed, he appealed to the whole rebel structures. Like, she was my aunt or cousin, aunt. And right now, the Holy Spirit has anointed me to be the leader. So he sort of brought all the groups together. And that's where
along religious lines.
Yes, and it's more ethnic lines.
Ethnic lines.
The religious lines came later. LRA was maybe 12. It's like 12 years. The name LRA is like 12 years. Before it was something else. I don't remember, but that came later on. And he sort of used the whole spirituality as in, because he was being hunted. They killed all his bodyguards, his people, but he lived. So it sort of added to his mystique. Is that the word? Yeah. So that's sort of where, okay, then I've been ordained to live. I mean, they can't even kill me. They can't do. That's where all that came from. So he's just playing into how people perceive him. I think he's a very rational human being. And I mean, if he wasn't, he would probably still be in Uganda. But no, he's gone to Chad, a failed state.
He went to Chad.
He's in Chad because he knows. I mean, it's a failed country. You can't find him. And
Rational. I like you said, rational human being.
But the main problem I have with the video is why now? This conflict has been going on for 26 years. Why now? Like, why not 10 years ago or 5 years ago? And I could probably argue that, well, Facebook wasn't that strong. So maybe now but bringing facts about, false facts actually, about somebody and...
You think the video had false facts? Like what? Like what kind of What kind?
Yes, Kony is a monster. Yes, he's done terrible things, but it didn't happen in a vacuum. It came from somewhere. It's not like he woke up and yes, I'm going to be kidnapping kids and doing this stuff and no. But then again, he doesn't kidnap all his kids. There's actually a report written by someone about, well, so the army of Uganda comes to the northern part, they kill people suspected to have ties with him. So he comes and looks at the kids and like, hey, so your parents have been killed. What are you going to be doing with yourself? Nothing. Come with me. And at least you get food to eat, something to do, and maybe you can have revenge on the people who killed your parents. And I mean, being a kid of maybe 10, 12, I think the kid was like 12 years old. His whole reason right now is how to survive. So, pretty sure he's angered by what he saw the army do. So he's going to go to Kony's camp willingly. But this is something else they don't talk about.
So your problem with the video is they don't tell his story.
They don't tell the full story.
They don't tell the full story.
But regardless, Kony is a bad person and he needs to be brought to trial. But that doesn't mean there won't be another Kony. That doesn't mean the problems of that region will stop. Because to be honest, LRA is a dead group. It's non-existent right now. So for this video, it's sort of playing to him right now. His fame has suddenly gone up.
So it's quite interesting because like even the method, maybe Michael, you could address that. Like, I mean, the way they made the video is in such a way that we're going to make people who commit atrocities famous. And by the way, we're going to start with this guy. That's. I mean, when I watched the movie, I kind of felt uncomfortable because I'm like, well, the guy doesn't need to be famous. The guy needs to be caught somehow. But just the way they did it, maybe I don't really know anything about social media, so maybe you can just how
well, I don't know
how they made.
I mean, social media, as we've seen, is just a tool, right? It's just one tool among many to get your message out. And if you're really good at taking advantage of it, its impact can be huge. But you could have 50 other people making these types of videos who don't have the skills or just, aren't the first to do it, and it goes nowhere, right? So with that, they did a really good job, right? They took everything that they've seen, they crafted their message well. I mean, think about the presentation of Kony, right? So you need a bad guy, right? This is a great bad guy. People love a bad guy in a movie. We've got a bad guy, right? They keep the message really simple, right? Like, we just want to get the bad guy and put him behind bars, right? Okay, got it. I can follow this story. And then they include you, the viewer, in a way as an activist or whatever you want to be. Again, very simply, like, you don't even have to leave your chair, right? Like, we're going to ask you if you think that this would be a good idea, maybe you can go put up some posters. But really what you're going to do is sign a pledge, share this video with your friends, and that's it. End of the day, you feel better about yourself because you're helping track down a bad guy. And you're spreading their message. And it's working, like, lots of people suddenly know who Kony is. Will we know why at this particular moment it happened?
We don't know.
No, there's no test we can do for that. But, it was very effective, the way they went about it. And I think that's what we're going to have to learn from.
So I'll ask you a final question. Maybe you can say what that you have something to say. So final question. Is this video going to make a positive change on the ground?
First thing Go ahead. First thing I'd like to say about the video is I just read this, but in the so-called region where Kony has been kidnapping the kids and committing most of his atrocities, when the video was showed to the community, there was outrage. And
in Uganda?
Yes. And then I'll take a quote from the person. It's like, there was a strong sense from the audience that the video was insensitive to African and Ugandan audiences, and that it did not accurately portray the conflict or the victims. And this is a region where Kony is reputed to have committed most of his crimes. So if the audience started to throw stones at the television screen and they got up to leave, like, what are we watching? There's probably something in there.
So it's not a positive change. Is that what I'm?
The audience. I don't
know nothing to make about it, but it was. It's a sort of a weird message. If this guy has been terrorizing your region for so long, and now there's a group trying to bring him, make him like the message is getting behind bars, and you're watching this and you're outraged, then it begs for you have to go back and find out why. I can't answer that question here, but it's
Michael.
Well, I think that's he brings up a really good point in that the outrage in a lot of the video I saw stemmed from the fact that, like, you know, what do we as people that study conflict issues hear about the most is that people want to tell their stories, right? Like that they know they may never get justice, but if you're going to talk about them and what they've been through, they want to either be the one to tell you how that event took place, or hear you recognize what they've gone through, right? Like, and at its most basic level, that's a lot of the work we do, is sitting around, listening people tell their stories. Because we know we can't offer them Joseph Kony's head on a platter, right? Like, there are all kinds of restraints. And to have that be the number one criticism of this video, I think is completely fair, you know, and it's a charge that Invisible Children really has to address, right? Because this is the kind of weird world of NGOs that we live in, that we talk about like grassroots peace building and all this stuff that, you know, we want more local involvement, and all of our field offices are run by locals and whatever, but yeah, the hierarchy goes up, and who's at the top? It's a bunch of white kids in the United States that don't live there, that don't deal with this every day, and that really, as much as we want to say, yes, you're involved in getting people in there and you have local participants, you're still at the top, right? And it was your story that was told, not the people in Uganda.
Okay, well, we'll end it there. I kind of liked the video, but we'll end it there.
No,
Thank you.
It's a good piece of film, you know. Like us propaganda makers need to look at it and say, like, this is a real lesson right here.
Yeah.
70 million people.